This is a preview to say that during this whole video, this child decided to eat and go to the bathroom during the making of this video. Why do you do what you do? He doesn't want to explain himself. Hey y'all, it's Becky here from the Beckisphere, where we talk about climate news and solutions. You have entered a deep dive video where I talk about a complicated topic while sipping tea. A few days ago, President Biden signed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act into law. Today we're going to discuss what climate provisions are in that $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill and if it could really be considered a piece of climate legislation. Basically, the infrastructure bill helps address our C- infrastructure grade coming from the American Society of Civil Engineers last year. The bill will allocate money over the next 5 years to physical infrastructure endeavors. It will all be paid for by tapping into unspent COVID relief aid and unemployment insurance some states have halted, and many other little places. So basically, no carbon or methane tax and no taking money from top polluters. Honestly, improving infrastructure in general will help build climate resilience. So there's $110 billion for roads, highways, and bridges. There's $25 billion for airport runways, gates, terminals, and taxiways, and $55 billion for water and wastewater infrastructure, including replacing lead pipes, which is indescribably overdue. There's also $66 billion for Amtrak to improve their Northeast corridor. Of course, public transportation is very important to help reduce our transportation emissions, as that sector is the most emitting sector in the US. And then there's pieces that are a little more obviously climate related, like $39 billion for expanding and improving public transportation and helping subnational governments buy low emissions or zero emissions vehicles, and the $65 billion to improve the reliability and resilience of the electrical grid and invest in carbon capture technology. These are spending parts that have climate emphases on them and could push towards electric vehicles and investment in carbon capture, though other parts could be huge for the climate too if utilized correctly. For example, if the electric grid was updated in a way that made it easier for clean energy generation to ramp up, that would be a big climate investment. And then there's things that are very obviously climate related spending, such as the $7.5 billion for electric vehicle charging stations, $5 billion to switch school buses to electric or hybrid, and $47 billion for climate resiliency efforts, which will help communities prepare for worsening floods, wildfires, and other extreme weather events. That last $47 billion makes this the biggest federal investment in climate resilience in US history. But does that make it a climate bill? Well, critics mostly say no, that this is at best a down payment for climate change. Because while $47 billion sounds like a lot to us mere mortals, in reality it's nowhere near the amount that we would need to prepare for extreme weather events and sea level rise. To move facilities at risk of flooding, redirect roads and airport terminals, build seawalls, or move residents, reduce wildfire risk, etc., we will need hundreds of billions of dollars. But hey, this is a start. So now, if you would like to humor me, let's go a little more in depth into the bill, because I noticed that the numbers I said above did not add up to $1.2 trillion, which resulted in me actually looking at the physical legislation and then eventually giving up on trying to find the rest of those numbers because they were frankly buried between way too much document. So instead I just made some notes on interesting bullet points that money is going to go to relating to the climate crisis that I found that I think aren't mentioned as much. So I'd like to look into those. So the first category I want to look at is surface transportation. Some interesting parts I noticed include congestion mitigation and air quality improvement, wildlife crossing safety, grants for charging and fueling infrastructure, reduction of truck emissions at port facilities, which means, according to the EPA, decreasing the average age of the fleet, reducing idle and creep time, participating in the EPA SmartWay program, considering complementary rail and marine operations, and designating truck routes to avoid at-risk populations. There's also a carbon reduction program, which is in the federal aid highway program and channels money into biking and pedestrian trails, transit, and other energy efficient transportation to reduce transportation emissions. There's the congestion relief program. There is the Promoting Resilience Operations for Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Saving Transportation program, also known as the PROTECT program, which provides grant money to improve transportation efficiency. There's the Healthy Streets program, which aims to tackle the urban heat inequity due to lack of vegetation or influx of concrete in poor communities. And then there's a bunch of studies, like the Disaster Relief Mobilization Study, a report on emerging alternative fuel vehicles and infrastructure, a non-highway recreational fuel study, a report on air quality improvements, a permeable pavement study to reduce flooding, the emergency relief projects, a study on reports of stormwater best management practices, an invasive plant elimination program, and pollination-friendly practices on roadways and highways right-of-way. The other category I want to cover is energy, which covers grid resilience, cybersecurity, clean energy technology and supply chains, fuel and technology investments, data collection, energy efficiency buildings, methane reduction, abandoned mine land reclamation, wildfire management, ecosystem restoration, Western water infrastructure, and drinking water infrastructure. So it is a very broad category. Now, you'll have access to my notes in the link below overall on these points that I found interesting, so I'm not going to go into all of the ones I found interesting, but here's a few from those subcategories. In the grid resilience, they included the development of technologies to enhance grid flexibility, maybe like the transformer in Mississippi that we talked about like 2 climate recaps ago, that can make it easier for clean energy generation to be added to the grid. They also include the demonstration of EV battery second life applications for grid storage, which I found really interesting. A very interesting concept, because I think it means that they're going to see if they can reuse EV batteries into long-term storage facilities, which is a cool idea. Similarly, for clean energy technology supply chains, they included starting a EV battery recycling and second life applications program to figure out how we can make it a closed loop system to reduce pressure on mining for new resources. But that being said, they also did include utilizing different satellite and AI technologies to search for more raw minerals deposits needed to up the EV industry. The fuels and technology investments category is quite a lot. It includes carbon capture, utilization, storage, and transportation infrastructure, and also hydrogen research and development. But they don't specify for hydrogen whether or not they're only referring to green hydrogen or if they're also mistakenly referring to blue hydrogen. You can look at one of my previous videos on why I consider that a mistake if they do. It includes nuclear energy infrastructure, which includes planning for micro and small modular nuclear reactors, and creates a civil nuclear credit program. And it also improves support for hydropower, such as production incentives, efficiency improvement incentives, and pumped storage hydropower wind and solar integration, and system reliability initiatives. Hydropower is a complicated issue because it is only questionably clean and environmentally friendly, and yet it provides consistent energy and energy storage potential. So I'm honestly surprised to see that they seem to be encouraging new hydropower plants to be built. That's a whole other thing. Also did a video on that. The bill supports a lot of data collection surrounding energy production and storage as well. Some notable mentions include a study and report by the Secretary of Energy on job loss and impacts of consumer energy costs due to the revocation of the permit for the Keystone XL pipeline, and a study on the impact of forced labor in China on the electric vehicle supply chain. So those are interesting study choices. The rest of the energy subcategories I mentioned a bit ago are about what you would expect. So again, I recommend checking a link out in the description section below to see all the bullet points that I found interesting. Which parts did you find the most interesting? Please go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. And in my next video, I'm going to break down COP26. So if you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button below and ring the bell so you don't miss the next time I post. Until next time, remember to talk about the climate crisis every single day and to support your local news organizations. A big thank you to my supporters on Patreon who help me pay for my equipment and the many news subscriptions that I need to make these videos happen. A special shout out to my climate confident and climate courageous patrons, David H., FK, Norman Inall, and Greg H. I greatly appreciate your support. If you would like to support the work I do, remember to hit that like, subscribe, and consider joining me on Patreon too. Thank you for watching, and I will see y'all soon.